Good morning, everyone. Hope you are doing well. Welcome again to this First Nation Housing Conference 2020. And thank you for giving me the opportunity to speak today and to take part of this event. My name is Nejma Belrashid, as I said, and I have been here. This is my fourth time here in Thunder Bay. The first time I came here, it was for the 15th edition of the First Nation Housing Conference. And it's always good to be here with you. Though I said that this is my fourth time, so I'm starting to have a nice collection of First Nation work arts in my house. And I saw this event really growing, even for the last 4 years. I didn't know how it started like 18 years ago, but just for the 4 years that I've been coming to this event, I saw this event really growing. And this is really a good sign for a hope for the First Nation housing future. We will spend the next hour and a half together speaking about the code development system and the Part 9 significant changes that will be in the next edition of the code, it is 2020. The most part will be dedicated to the changes, but I wanted to take maybe the 15 to 20 first minutes to explain to you how the codes are developed so you understand how the changes came into the code. So this is what my presentation today will focus on. So I will try to respond to these questions. What are model codes in terms of history? What codes do? And present the status as we speak. And also there are future plans for model codes. What is the code development system? Who are the groups that are involved in developing the codes and the requirements? What's the role of the Commission, the CCBFC, and the provinces and territories? What's their input into the codes that are being developed? And also, I will finish by how we can participate. I always give this presentation, even when I came here previously. The presentation was longer, so I shortened it this time because I have more changes to present. So first, under our constitution, buildings and fire safety regulation is the provincial territorial responsibility. So how is the National Research Council, Codes Canada, a federal government agency, involved in this system? So back in 1937, there were no national or provincial territorial construction codes. The issue of construction standards and requirement was typically addressed at the municipal level, which led to multiple requirements that varied from city to city and town to town. And of course, this made the life difficult for developers, contractors, who had to deal with differing regulations. The insurance and mortgage sectors did not have a set of minimum requirement that they could be sure that when they insure any house, that these houses, they met a certain minimum requirement. So to address all these issues, it was decided to harmonize construction requirements throughout Canada, and NRC was chosen to develop the National Model Construction Code. Today, like 80 years later, construction technologies and technique differ vastly from what they were at the beginning of the century. Those used at the time, the first building code was published the first time in 1941. So to keep pace with the latest innovations and technologies, a new edition of the national codes are published approximately 5 years. And what we call national model codes are national building code, fire code, plumbing code. Those are, we call them national model codes. And I will explain to you why. And today, as for April 2019, I think maybe many of you already know that, the NRC is offering free access to the downloadable, this is a mouthful word for me, and online format of the national building codes, fire code, plumbing code, and energy code for buildings, as well as the provincial codes published by NRC. The provincial codes published by NRC, I know that there is the Quebec Construction Code, there is the Alberta Code, and the BC Code. The NRC, we publish this as well. So paper copies are also available, but they are really now very reduced price. It's no longer as they used to be, like hundreds of dollars. They are almost free. So although the National Research Council, from where I come, and Codes Canada, so NRC publishes the national model codes every 5 years, adoption and enforcement of the codes are the responsibility of the provincial territorial authorities having jurisdictions. Some provinces and territories adopt the national building code as is, and some others, they adopt it with modifications. So the federal government provides ongoing funding for NRC and code development system to develop and harmonize building codes across the country. And the ultimate goal is to have one set of national codes adopted and enforced throughout Canada, and we are working on this as we speak. Why is working towards having one set of requirements throughout Canada? Because uniform codes improve the health and safety of Canadians. For example, in the National Building Code 2015, requires bigger steps in houses. And this change will provide around 13,000 falls in houses. And if it's not applied across the country, so this will delay this kind of injuries for later. Because as we speak, there are cities and provinces that are still using 2010 code or 2015 codes, so they are always behind what should be done for the health and safety of the Canadian, and everything in these codes are minimum requirements. So some minimum requirements are implemented 10, 15 years later in certain locations. It's not very based on all the effort that we're doing. I think the best thing is to have one set of requirements across Canada. Also, having one set of rules consistently applied have other benefits. It reduces regulatory burden and removes barriers to internal trade in a sector, this is the construction sector, that employs 1.4 million people. It lowers the cost for the construction industry because it's uniform, makes it easier for designers, product manufacturers, distributors, and contractors to conduct business more efficiently cross-country. And as we speak, the federal government is continuing to work with the provinces and territories towards the timely adoption of the national model codes in a way to ensure that the needs of provinces, territories, and all Canadians are met. So let's have a look to who are involved in the code development system. Here we can see three major bodies. We have NRC. NRC is the body that provides the technical and administrative support. And we have the commission in blue, the Canadian Commission on Building and Fire Code. It's an independent body. It's not related or linked to NRC. And we have the Provincial Territorial Advisory Committee. This is the role of the provinces. So the So the CCBFC, the PTPAC give advice to the CCBFC, and the CCBFC make sure that all the technical requirements have followed the due process, and everything is done in a way in transparent and consensus-based decision, and also scientifically proven solutions that end up in the codes. There are many, previously the roles of the provinces and territories became more and more important during, I can say, maybe the last 10 years. And here is the diagram of how all this works. So we have the overlooking body, which is the Canadian Commission on Building and Fire Codes. The Canadian Commission do not do any technical work. The technical work is done by the standing committees. We have 9 standing committees, like here, Standing Committee on Energy Efficiency, Fire Protection, Housing and Small Building. This is where I stand. This is, I'm the lead technical advisor for the Standing Committee on Housing and Small Building. And we have Standing Committee on Use and Egress. So although I'm the team lead for the Standing Committee on Housing and Small Building, there is what we say cross-committee coordination. There are always things that Part 9 might be affected if changes in Part 3, in Part 6. So we make sure that cross-committee coordination is done properly. And the Standing Committee, any Standing Committee could have task groups to address special issue. Like the Standing Committee on Housing and Small Building, as we speak, we have a task group on stairs, we have a task group on radon, we have a task group on basement, and so on. So the code development process is also open and transparent. It is also a continuous process that makes consensus-based decision, as I said it. It has some key features, such as balanced membership by region and interest categories, and substantial public involvement. The public is mainly involved through being proponent of any code. So I'm also part of this public. Like as technical advisor, I can decide to submit a code change request. And you can submit a code change request to any national model code, national building code or fire code. Consensus is an important word when developing codes, and it's an important word for the code development system in Canada. And there is here a definition of what the consensus means. And simply having a vote that passes is not enough. Consideration and weighting of all opinions need to be considered. The standing committee, any standing committee, makes sure through the chair and the members that all opinions were considered, even if the person that expressed that opinion doesn't change his or her opinion at the end, and we can record this in the minutes. So I would like to highlight a few points about code development system. Just so all standing committees and task groups are public meetings, so you can participate through teleconference, for instance. We have, like the Standing Committee on Housing and Small Building is a very popular standing committee. So we have 25 members, but we have sometimes up to 30 observers. So proposed changes are posted for public review, and you can participate as well to public review. For the public review, there is, as we speak, 2020 public review for a set of requirements. And any comment that you put in the public review will be revised and addressed by the standing committee. So for this presentation, I hope that you have come to realize this is a short presentation. This is really a high-level presentation. It takes normally 3 times this to go through all the code development system. Model codes, they address national interest and try to help new product enter the market. The model codes are set of minimum requirement for health, safety, and accessibility for all Canadians. Supports from the provinces and territories ensure that the new technical requirements are used, and having all parties understand the overall system helps process to work. So I will finish this short first time with asking everyone to get involved as for a standing committee or task group, either by being a member if you have expertise, or just as an observers to give your comments and understand the codes. You can submit a code change request to a code. You can submit a comment through our website. There is an ongoing public review right now. And you can also attend any public meeting. There are almost all our meetings are public except the executive committee of the CCBFC. This is a closed meetings. Otherwise, everything is public. So now I will move into, I said 15 minutes, this is good. So I will move into the meat of today's presentation. What are the changes, new changes that we will see in the 2020 code. I will start with part 9, but for the first time, I think I have 3 or 4 changes that I took from other part of the building, other part of the national building, and also from the National Plumbing Code. I thought that this could be of interest to you because this is something that we deal with every day. So the focus on part 9, but there will be some other changes from other part of the building, National Building Code. So these 5 changes, they passed all the public review, all the CCBFC recommendation, and we're 100% sure they will be in the next edition of the National Building Code. Let's start with the asbestos. Asbestos can cause adverse health effect. It's a cancerogenic product or material. And they can affect people living in houses that has this material, and also people who manipulate these while working with material-based where there's asbestos in them. So by people who are installing these products or maintaining these products or cutting through, there's this particulates that can go into the system and cause really very severe illness and ultimately end up with a cancer. So asbestos-based materials are now banned banned in all Canada. So the National Building Code is like we're catching up on something that's being already prohibited everywhere. All references in the 2020, all references to asbestos in the national model codes were now removed. Protection of windows, this is a very important change. The National Building Code requires that a guard or special mechanisms capable of limiting the opening of windows to 10 by 30 centimeters protect openable windows in building of residential occupancies. These specifications are meant to minimize the likelihood of children falling significant height from open windows. However, single-family dwellings are exempt from this requirement, meaning that you can have a house with 3 stories. You can have a window up on the 3rd story, and you can have an open window up to the floor. And this was a problem, and data compiled from different sources showed that every year across the country, average of 400 children under the age of 10 are treated in hospital emergency rooms from falling from openable residential windows. And with the majority of falls occurring to children under 4 years old. And of those, 80 to 90 of them are admitted for severe injury and requires follow-up treatment, sometimes for their entire life. The exception is now based on a minimum height of 900 millimeters from the finished floor to the bottom edge of the openable portion of the window. I skipped this one. Meaning that this kind is no longer allowed unless on the other side of the window there is 1.8 meters. So the change introduced in 2020 requires more openable windows to be protected by guards or controlling mechanisms. It aligns the exception for openable windows of a family homes with those of other residential occupancy like multi-unit buildings. We got really a great feedback during the public comments. I think we had more than close to 120 comments from doctors, nurses, parents, health community people saying that they have been waiting for this change for so long, and it's great for our codes to have this as a minimum requirement protection of openable windows. Home type care occupancy. This is something also coming into part 9. With the aging of population, there is a demand for affordable lodging in home type environment for people with a loss of autonomy, and especially in remote places and small towns and villages where they cannot build a B occupancies under Part 3. It's very expensive. Care occupancies, because all care occupancies right now are not allowed to be constructed under Part 9. We should go to Part 3. And Part 3 requires automatically sprinklers, area of refuge, and so on, fire compartments, to keep people that, if in case of emergency, the plan is to keep people inside because it's very difficult to evacuate this kind of people outside. So everything is based to keep people inside. So to allow these facilities in new communities, in small communities and villages, we created this subset of cares, and the name is B4 occupancy, allowed to be in Part 9. And the name is home type care occupancy because it could be as small as a house and almost built as a house with just small, there are features, specific features for this care occupancy, but the overall, it's not very expensive. So, so existing B care occupancies, like we can see B1, B2, B3, are based on protecting in-place measures, such as sprinklers, and compensate the difficulty of conducting a full evacuation, as I said. B4 requirements ensures adequate means of egress that allow the full evacuation of residents in timely manner. No need for sprinklers, and no need for other features like area of refuge and so on. This requirement will facilitate even an alteration of an existing building into a home type care occupancy. What are the other conditions? The other conditions is we maintain all the residents, they should be on the first story. Even if the house has a basement or second story, they will be used for kitchen or other use, but the resident, they should stay on the first story. 2 barrier-free egress path, including ramps, will be required, and a fire alarm system and fire safety plans are also required. Those are the main requirement to have a B4 home type care occupancies. And I see, like, for the you mainly living in small villages and remote locations, sometimes you have maybe people that need to be treated or to be treated in small care occupancies. I think this is instead of sending them to hundreds of kilometers away from their homes, they could be just next to their parents and be safely treated, and everyone, it's going to be a good for the health and the quality of life of people. Interconnection of smoke alarms. Right now in the code, only hardwired interconnected smoke alarms is allowed. And for a house with secondary suites, the NBC 2015 requires that all smoke alarms be wired, hardwired, I mean, so that the activation of one alarm will cause all alarms within the dwelling units to be sound, including in house with secondary suites. However, there is a discrepancy between the Canadian Electrical Code, who doesn't allow that 2 dwelling units to have the same interconnection of their smoke alarms. So there was some regulatory inconsistencies between the NBC and the Canadian Electrical Code, and because of we have now new technologies and new standards that allow wireless interconnection of smoke alarms, now this is in the code. And even not only for a house with secondary suites, but now in the code there is another requirement that allow wireless interconnection of smoke alarms even within one dwelling unit. Within your apartment or your house, you can use a wireless interconnection of smoke alarms. Spatial separation between buildings. I know that not everyone is very familiar with how all the calculation of the exposing building face and how to calculate the area of glazed opening in the house. But for the houses, we used to take like every portion of, we can take portions of the walls to calculate the maximum glazed openings. The closest we are to the property line, the less percentage of the opening we have. This is like the basic calculation. So by doing so, I can have less opening because I am close to here, but I will have more opening on this wall because I'm away like 8 meters. And the code uses vertical portion of the wall. And the word vertical portion is causing some problems when we have something that looks like a horizontal portion of the house, of the wall. And we can see here there is a horizontal portion, and this has also created some misinterpretation. People that do not know exactly how to use this, it's not a vertical portion, it's a horizontal portion. So what we did, we went back to the first time this came into the code, and we realized that it has never meant to be vertical portions, just portions. We can divide the exposing building face on multiple portions, whether they are horizontal or vertical. So we, by this, the National Building Code corrected some misinterpretation and some enforcement implication for how to calculate the area of glazed opening for houses. So those are the 5 main changes that we know they will be in the next edition of the code. Now I will go into another group of proposed changes because they are still at the public review and the comments are not yet reviewed. So we don't know if they will end up in the code or not. As we speak, we are receiving more comments. And all the comments for the group that I'm going to present will be addressed at the May meeting of the Standing Committee in Ottawa. The Standing Committee on Housing on Small Building will have a 3-day meeting in Ottawa. And the main purpose of this 3-day meeting will be to review all the comments, hundreds of comments, by the way, that we received from the 2019 and 2020 code public review. So here you can see the two lists, the handful of changes for 2019 and 2020 public review. Let's start with the glass block. Again, this is related to special separation provisions that limits the area of windows on the exposing building face to limit the spread of fire. In 2005, the provision were divided into 2 sections. One section for buildings, Part 9 buildings, and another section for houses. In doing so, an existing requirement allowing for larger windows under certain conditions was only applied for small buildings. Somehow it was never applied to houses. So this proposed change corrects that error and allows, we're proposing that larger size windows be also allowed for dwelling units if the glazed opening consists of glass block. We can double the area or the building is sprinklered. Clarification. Location of exhaust discharge. Many bathroom exhaust fans and fan and dryer exhaust are placed within the soffit, like here. The problem with this is that warm air and moist coming from this location, which is supposed to vent directly to the outside, outdoor, can discharge into the soffit. They can re-enter the soffit, like comes here and can re-enter in the soffit, causing damage to the roof sheathing, trusses, insulation, and drywall. There is approximately 5% of the houses that have this problem. So this proposed change introduced a requirement for unvented soffit extending minimum distance on each side on the vent. We're requiring that if we have a vent here, we need to have unvented soffit 1.8 meters on each side. And then if we cannot have this on the vent, then we can use, we can have the venting on the attic. We can have an exhaust, vertical exhausting to the exterior. If it's not possible, like if you have in location we have row houses, for example, and we cannot vent this on the side, we can just vent through the roof. Are you allowing for questions? Yes. I will keep the question period at the end. We still have how many? We're in time, right? We have 45 minutes. Grab bars in bathtubs and showers. Currently, in the code, there is no requirement in the NBC for grab bars in bathtubs and showers other than in hotels and motels. Research has shown that slips and falls in bathtubs and showers are an issue for all age groups. And then installing grab bars in these locations can reduce the risk of falls because the grab bars, they facilitate the transfer in and out of the bathtubs and also of the showers. The proposed changes add requirements for grab bars for a vertical grab bar and horizontal grab bars. This proposed change looks like to grab bars. But the task group has been working for 10 years because of the impact analysis. The cost-benefit analysis was very challenging to find data about people falling in bathtubs and showers, and what's the benefit, what's the cost of adding these grab bars everywhere in all bathtubs and showers in all occupancies, not only in houses, everywhere. So that's why it was a very challenging exercise to conduct the cost-benefit analysis. I think there were 3 tries before we get something that is scientifically based and recognized by the standing committee, and they finally decided to go ahead with this change. We don't know exactly. We received lots of comments, and we're going to see what will happen to this requirement, to this proposed change, not a requirement. ICF construction, this is the insulation concrete form. The requirement for using above ground insulated concrete form construction have been limited to only single dwelling units since 2005. The proposed changes remove this limitation and allow other buildings type like up to 2-story buildings to be constructed with ICF walls and using prescriptive requirement in Part 9. A number of small changes also were introduced, like including reference to new standards, prescriptive requirement about attachment of claddings, interior finishes, and also there is a clarification in the appendix. This for the January 2020, there is, I don't have the details about this, but there is lateral loads requirement that's coming, and there is 6 proposed changes for stairs. They are not that significant, so I just mentioned them. But if you would like to know what they are, you can go into the website, go to public review, and you will have all the proposed change forms with the rationale, justification, and you can comment on the requirement. Other changes to the national, as I said, I picked some changes from other parts. They are all health-related changes and also children's safety. This is from Part 6 of the NBC, and it's related to the Legionella. The Legionnaire's disease is potentially a fatal respiratory illness that is caused by exposure to the Legionella bacteria. These changes are intended to minimize adverse health effects caused by this bacteria. We find this bacteria in swimming pools, domestic water system, showers, ice making machines, etc. Mainly where there is water and stagnant water. So there were revisions in Part 6 to requirement for various systems, air coolers, misters, humidifiers, drain, etc., to try to minimize the chances of bacteria growth, such as having water continuously flowing, etc. This is, we're talking, there's, as we speak, there is all these coronavirus things going on. So the national model codes also look into some of this health to minimize the growing of certain bacteria in buildings. We report that there is usually around 100 cases every year with the Legionella. And this is, we do not count people who has pneumonia. And the people who has pneumonia might be affected by this. So it's a health issue in Canada. I also have a couple of changes to the National Plumbing Code, because I think this is drinking water. This is for everyone, so I thought this might be of interest for you. One of the health objectives of the National Plumbing Code is to ensure that drinking water is safe for consumption. The NPC 2020 will refer to an NC CAN standard to ensure that users have products that are safe and meet the health requirements. So where as a minimum requirement now there is a standard to ensure that drinking water is safe. The National Plumbing Code also, this is about rainwater harvesting. And do you have rainwater harvesting in your communities? No? Because it's becoming more and more popular, apparently. So the NPC addresses already non-portable water systems, but there was nothing about the rainwater harvesting systems, although they are becoming very popular. Changes will be introduced in the 2020 to allow the use of rainwater harvesting systems, also known as rainwater reclamation systems. These changes help to ensure that safe connection between portable and non-potable water systems are done properly, use good engineering practice, properly labeled piping, etc. This is again, with non-potable water in healthcare facilities, the presence of bacteria, viruses, and chemicals in non-potable water may pose a health risk, particularly for persons with weak immune system who may have like, they have a weak system, so we do not allow the changes, specifically say, no, we do not allow this non-potable water in health facilities. And this is safety glazing. This is for schools. This is about wired glass. Wired glass is used by designers, usually in fire separation. The problem is that there was a number of documented severe injuries resulting from human impact with wired glass, mostly occurring in schools. So the proposed change is for assembly occupancies. It's not in part 9, this is in part 3, and requires glazing used in locations subject to impact to meet a new requirement. This is an updated standard, meaning that the traditional uncoated wired glass may not meet the new requirement. It will not be addressed or allowed. I think you can skip this one. So I will end with saying that the public review, there is an ongoing public review now. And the link to the website is on the screen. You can go and dig and see more changes. This is, as I said, I brought with me maybe 12. This is a handful. And there are dozens of changes posted for public review. And also, if you have any questions or inquiries, this is the link to get in touch with us, whether for code change request or a general questions about what's in the code. And now it's time for question. Any questions? Yes?
Just one question in regards to the soft venting. So I realize that's proposed and that's still with the...
It's under, yes, it's...
reviewed. So does that make any changes for any vents that are below soffits?
Yes.
Exhausts?
Yeah, the change, I've seen it because it's not really part 9, but I read the change. And even on the walls, there will be these distances will be applied. From any exhaust, any venting, there will be this 1 meter will be applied.
And that is just for ventilation? How about combustion gases?
Sorry?
What about combustion gases from propane, furnaces?
No, this is especially for dryers and fans. This is what we have. This is not for the exhausting of other gases. This is a good question. Yeah. Yes.
The smoke alarms.
Yes.
What do you do now that it's hardwired? Is it like mandatory or recommended?
No, up to now, the code said hardwired in the code, up to 2015. There was the wireless interconnection isn't allowed. But there is the change in the code in 2020 that will allow this. And it actually not, it's an interim change. It's already published. It's already published. It's updated. It was, I think, in the second edition of 2015 codes, it was there.
And what do you do with the existing units that don't have hardwired smoke alarms?
You mean the one that do not have or the one that have?
The ones that don't have the hardwired.
No, it's an option. It's not. It's an option. You still, yeah. No. It's not mandatory. You're still allowed to use hardwired, and now there is a second option to use wireless.
Because you need both hardwired
Yeah.
with the batteries.
Yeah.
So in case of a power
Oh,
outage.
yes, but not in a house with secondary suites. Yeah, in a house with secondary suites, you need the wireless, because to be consistent with the electrical code. But within your house, within your apartment or your house, now you have the option of hardwiring or wireless connection of your smoke alarms. But for a house with a secondary suite, there should be separate. Yeah, we should know. We are not allowed to use hardwiring system in a house with secondary suite. Any other questions? Yes?
With regards to forest fires, is there a move towards going to metal roofing?
Sorry?
With regards to forest fires and the problems with fires,
Okay.
is there a move to go to non-combustible metal roofing?
For houses?
Yes.
No. There is no such proposal to go. No, it's still combustible. Housing are allowed to be of non-combustible construction. And for the spatial separation, if we are really close to the property line, there are instances if we are less than 0.6 meters, we need to have a exterior fire resistance rating. But there is no metal roofing on the table right now. One more question? Yes?
Do we get the information that you just presented?
Yes, my presentation is here with the speaker's notes. I think that they are always sent to everyone. I don't know how it's gonna be available for everyone, and with the speaker's note as well. And the speaker's notes are more developed than what I just gave, so more info. And for the harmonizing of the codes, there is, right now, as I said, the provinces, they're trying to get something signed by the provinces by the end of 2020. And we have more and more provinces coming into the table. So we're really heading into having one set of requirements for model codes in the coming years. And this is good news for everyone. I know that you're struggling as a First Nations on what to use when developing or designing your own houses and facilities. So it's going to be easy for everyone. One set of requirements and no problem. Yep.
Is Ontario helping with that? With harmonization?
Good,
I
good.
get the impression that Ontario.
This is, I don't know. I know that there are 2 or 3 provinces that are on board. I'm not part of these meetings on this organization, but this is what I heard. We have minimal communication. We only need to say that they are working to have this harmonized codes. There are provinces on board. They are trying to convince others to come, but I don't know where Ontario stands in this process. They are always very recalcitrant, the Ontario. Always. Thank you. Okay.
Any other questions?
We have time. Okay.
On behalf of the First
Thank-
Nations Housing Council,
thank you
I'd
very
like to
much.
present you with
Thank
this.
you.
Thank you for your presentation.
Thank you. Thank
And
you
I'll
very
be
much.
punching you.
Thank you. Thank you.